Hi, my name is Kelly Hansen, and this is my social topics presentation number 4. Prosocial behavior is any behavior that shows kindness and is meant to be done with the primary intention of benefiting others. One factor that impacts prosocial behavior is our moral development. Kohlberg and Eisenberg both had ideas about the stages of moral development. Kohlberg thought that there were 3 stages, and Eisenberg thought that there were 5. Both had the idea that the stages started with only caring about one's own needs when we were children, and that the later stages involve caring about the well-being of others, their needs, and how they are being treated, whether they are in our certain groups or not. Motivation is another factor that impacts prosocial behavior. Even if the behavior intends to benefit others, the motivation underneath the action may not be focused on them. Altruism is prosocial behavior motivated by the consideration of other people's needs, meaning that you put others' needs before your own. However, your own needs and priorities still matter, which leads to satisfaction being felt after prosocial behavior. Social value orientation is another factor that impacts prosocial behavior. It's when we weigh our personal outcomes against the outcomes of others in order to make a decision to help them or not. Lastly, responsibility also influences prosocial behavior. We need to feel at least a little bit of personal responsibility for addressing the needs or outcomes of someone else in order to help them or show kindness to them. People tend to withhold prosocial behavior when there's a lack of motivation, trust, responsibility, or if blame is placed on victims. People may have a lack of motivation to help others if they have a lot of stress in their personal life or have their own problems that they are dealing with. This makes them less likely to give their energy to others since they need it for themselves. Lack of trust has to do with the fear that another person is being manipulative or taking advantage of you for helping them. People often feel this way when they hesitate to donate money due to the worry of the money being spent on something that they do not intend it to be spent on. Lack of responsibility is probably the biggest reason why people withhold prosocial behavior. If we don't feel personally responsible, we often feel that we do not need to help others. This also has to do with bystander apathy, which occurs when we choose not to help someone because we feel that someone else will do it. This can be dangerous if no one helps, and it's more common when there are a lot of people around to see someone in need of help. Victim blaming and placing responsibility on victims is another reason why people would withhold prosocial behavior. If someone feels that the victim was in a controllable situation, they may think that it's the victim to be blamed for whatever is happening to them and that they don't need to help. We can learn from Scripture that we should not seek praise for doing kind acts. Even if people praise us, we should not show prosocial behavior with the main motivation of receiving praise. We also should not brag or tell everyone about the prosocial behavior and kindness that we show, such as helping, volunteering, or donating to others. After Jesus performed miracles, he instructed people to remain quiet about it and not to brag. The article that I chose to research is called Typologies of Cultural Stressors and Assets, exploring differential associations with prosocial behaviors and depressive symptoms among Latino or Latina young adults. The goal of this research was to understand the association between cultural stressors, prosocial behaviors, and depressive symptoms in relation to cultural assets. Cultural stressors referred to things like the marginalization of people related to cultural or immigrant status, institutional racism, discrimination, and foreigner objectification. All of these led to a lack in sense of belonging. Cultural assets referred to things such as family respect values and ethnic or racial identity, and the level that people associated themselves with their identity. The research found that ethnic and racial identity and family respect values, which are both cultural assets, had a positive correlation with care-based and public forms of prosocial behavior. The same cultural assets, however, had a negative relationship with altruistic behaviors. It also found that cultural stressors were positively associated with more depressive symptoms, which can influence the ability to act in prosocial ways. High cultural stressors in the context of high feelings of racial and ethnic identity commitment showed an increase in prosocial behavior. This could be due to the fact that people care for others who experience similar stressors, which supports the idea that we like to help those who are like us. From this research, I learned that there are lots of smaller, other things outside of the basics that we learn in class that can have an impact on our decision to act in prosocial ways of showing kindness and helping others. Something that I found to be interesting was that the participants with high levels of cultural stressors still had higher results of prosocial behavior. However, it made sense when thinking about it in the context of us helping those who are similar to us. It was also interesting to me that cultural stressors and ethnic assets had any type of relationship at all in terms of prosocial behavior. I wouldn't think that the two would interact with each other. I thought it was interesting that cultural assets had a negative relationship with altruistic behavior, despite having a positive relationship with other prosocial behavior. More research could be done to determine why this is, and it would be interesting to know why. Thank you.